Well, hello, and hello to everybody. It's so great to see all of your smiling faces and for you all to join us this afternoon for our wonderful executive fireside chat event hosted by PepsiCo. My name is Jamie Shum. My pronouns are she, her, and I am working at PepsiCo as a diversity program specialist, supporting all of our different diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives as it relates to our recruitment efforts for internship and also entry-level full-time opportunities here at PepsiCo. Today's session, we have amazing senior leaders and people at PepsiCo who are here and are very excited to share to you more about their own PepsiCo experiences, as well as talking about their stories as it relates to the theme topic of how to rise from failure. Just to share a little bit more about me, I have been working at PepsiCo in the PepsiCo campus recruitment team for a little over a year now. I am personally based in Purchase, New York, and my favorite PepsiCo product as of right now, I've been very much craving for a bag of Flaming Hot Cheetos as well as a refreshing can of bubbly. So without further ado, I'm gonna have our panelists introduce themselves. So whoever would like to go first, your name, pronouns, your job title, work location, the number of years you've been at PepsiCo, as well as your PepsiCo product or anything you're enjoying at the moment.
Sure, I can get started. Oh, go ahead. I can get started. This is Smita. So my name is Smita Corley. My pronouns are she and her. My current job with PepsiCo, I lead our global technology audits within our internal audit function called corporate audit. So I'm a senior director in that function. I am based in Plano, Texas. I have been with PepsiCo a little over 25 years. And my favorite PepsiCo product, it's actually a tie. I really love a product called Miss Vicky's. It's a kettle chip with sea salt and malt vinegar. Sea salt and vinegar. And my other favorite product is Aquafina because I love to stay hydrated. So I will turn it over to one of my peers.
I can go next. I am Sangeeta Raghavan. Nice to see you all. It's a pleasure looking at so many smiling faces today. I'm a marketing senior director at Frito-Lay. I'm based out of Plano, Texas. I've been with PepsiCo for almost 4 years now. Well, my favorite products are Cheetos Puffs and Popcorners. And I will pass on to the next person.
Karen, you want to go?
Sure, why not? I'll let you close this out. Hey all, it's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. Kieran Bretz, my pronouns are he and him. I am our senior director, a senior site director, for our Frankfurt core facility, so manufacturing facility we have here in Indiana. I've been with the organization for 8 years, and my favorite product, Sangeeta, I love the shout out of Popcorners has a very special place in my heart. So kettle Popcorners are one of my favorite brands, and then Fruit Punch Gatorade.
Awesome, and congrats, Kieran, on the recent promotion too. So didn't mention
much.
that. So
thank you.
My name is Mari Roberts. I am the Vice President of Transportation for Frito-Lay. I refer to myself as the head coach of a team of about 3,000 associates across the U.S. that actually physically keep our supply chain rolling. And you can see my lovely Cheetos truck back there representing there. So I've been with Frito-Lay for 22 years. So I believe Smita and I were both in that junior high program where we started when we were about 10. And my favorite PepsiCo products, like every time somebody said something, I was like, oh yeah, those are amazing. And Kieran, I do love, and I couldn't find them a lot, was the Thai, was it the chili Thai?
Oh, the sweet chili.
Sweet chili, those were amazing. I also really like the sour cream and onion stacks. And I do love the bubbly, Jamie. So the bubbly is really good. So hard to choose and narrow it down with all the amazing products we have.
I know, right? I think when it comes to bubbly, I love the line, but there's so many great flavors in that that line. I just loved it so much ever since I happened to bring a couple of cans from the office one day, and then my family and I were like, we love it so much. So now we just can't, we love buying it. So I would like to kick things off, and thank you, Smita, Sangeeta, Kira, and Mari for giving your intros to everybody here. I would like to first ask you all, I would love to, for you to share more on how you started your career after you graduated from, your respective college, university. And also just to hear more about when you realized that you wanted to work in the respective roles that you're in today and what drew you to working at PepsiCo.
I can start. I think I'm a little bit unique to the rest of the panelists because I started my career in India right after undergraduate school. I started my career in technology as I knew it was the route to achieve my American dream at that point. I always wanted to get into that field from freshman or sophomore year, I would say. Once I started in the technology job, I moved to the States through my company as my clients were based out of the US. So I moved from being a software developer to a software architect to a product management job. In the product management job is where I realized I really have a passion for consumer aspect of things, right? And that's when I decided to pursue a master's to switch fields actually from technology into marketing at that point. And marketing has provided me the opportunity to use both my analytical and creative skills at the same time. Currently, I'm in a role, you would see my background, which is called Pep Positive, from a Frito-Lay marketing standpoint. This is a strategic end-to-end transformation with sustainability at the core, right? As to how do we create growth, making sure we are creating both the people and planet impact. Right? This job entails making sure our brands have a purpose. I don't know how many of you are Doritos fans in the group, right? So if you are a Doritos fan, you'd have heard about Solid Black, which is around celebrating the change makers in the Black community, right? And if you're a Stacy's Pita Chips fan, Stacy's brand stands all for making sure we are supporting the female entrepreneurs. And this job entails making sure we are making positive choices from a product standpoint. And how do we make sure we are making products better and making sure it appeals to the Gen Z audience of the future.
I love that, Sangeeta. I think this is the second time I've heard about how you started with the organization, and that journey I think is so inspiring. So I think for the group, I actually joined. I was a campus hire, so I had the opportunity to actually intern with PepsiCo this summer between my junior and senior year. So Jamie, I know this wasn't the question you asked for, how did you know after college? But I fell in love with PepsiCo before I graduated college, and that was through my internship. And so our internship is a 10-week program that offers the opportunity for interns both to identify, hey, is this a company I want to work for long term, just as the organization assesses, hey, is this someone we want to bring on, a leader we want to bring on within our organization. And I'll tell you, during that 10 weeks, if you had asked me prior to the internship if I would be joining PepsiCo and making chips for a living, we do more than that, but that's the simple way of putting it. I probably would have told you no, but it was through that 10-week internship that I absolutely fell in love with our organization, what we stand for, a lot of what Sangeeta just shared with you all, but then more importantly, our people. And it's our people that ultimately brought me back, and continues to drive me day to day. So just wanted to build on what Sangeeta shared and share that with this group.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll go next. So a little bit different. So I actually was studying supply chain management in college, which is funny because back then it was actually the first year they rebranded it supply chain management. Nobody knew what it was. So it's funny, 2 decades later, like everybody knows what supply chain is. So we actually did a junior level project on Frito-Lay supply chain and also a senior level project. So similar to Karen, I wasn't an intern per se, but I got to know all the people in Frito-Lay's, DSD system and supply chain while I was in college. And so I actually started about a month before I graduated college. So my first advice is don't do that. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. That was stupid. So just take some time after school, go, you have plenty of time the rest of your life to be an adult. And absolutely just fell in love with transportation. So I loved, it was very fast paced. It was dynamic. It was like a lot of problem solving. No day was like the next day. And even 22 years later, I'm still learning something every day. And when you combine that with the people And, working, firsthand with the truck drivers was just amazing. It was just an amazing group of people. And for me, when I combined both of those, I was like, this is what I want to do. So I am very blessed and very fortunate that Frito-Lay has continued to let me pursue this kind of career in transportation. And just a little fun fact is this is the 5th job that I've had that didn't exist before I took it. And so as you're starting your careers, just don't necessarily focus on the roles that exist today and boxes on org charts, because when you're with a company like Frito-Lay and PepsiCo, we're going to continue to evolve, and we're looking for leaders. And our role as leaders, everybody on the panel today, is how do we match our talent with our business needs, and how are we going to move the organization forward?
Love that story, Mari. And Mari and I've had the privilege of working together in the past. So when I was graduating school, I actually majored in a program called business analysis. It's a degree that doesn't exist anymore at the university from which I came. And it was actually focused on 3 areas. Ironically enough, production operations management, which is now supply chain management, MIS, and management science, which many of us know now as data science or data and analytics. And so we were encouraged to pick a track of the 3 in which we specialized. I picked MIS because I always had a love and passion for programming and coding. And at the time, if you do the math, when I was leaving school, it was around the time of the Y2K problem. So it was also the time of what they call the tech boom with the .coms at the time, and then subsequent bust. And so I had a lot of competitive offers coming out of school for a lot of companies that needed to remediate their Y2K issues. And I fell in love with PepsiCo from the start. And at the time, it was Frito-Lay that particularly recruited me into their IT organization. It was the one company I wanted, even though I had other competitive offers. And I absolutely fell in love with what I was doing. My first several years out of school, I actually focused on the supply chain area, delivering systems and solutions for our Frito-Lay manufacturing facilities, as well as our global supply chain businesses. Had the opportunity to work, with Frito-Lay, but also with other businesses like Quaker and Gatorade, and then also our global supply chain businesses, some of our dairy business, some of our beverages businesses in other countries. And what's really kept me here is the same things that attracted me here, I'd say. So the people, which Karen mentioned, the people are phenomenal. You come into work with some very talented people, and that's really something that motivates me. The culture and the values for which the company stands for. You've heard some of that as Sangeeta and others have talked about some of the things that we, as PepsiCo associates, take pride in, and how we support our communities, support the environment, support our associates. And then the people that recruited me were not unlike the 10 years I have today. So it speaks to what they're doing as well. And it speaks to what I'm doing. I've had the privilege of working in several different organizations across PepsiCo, both in IT as well as in the functions. And it's been a great experience. So just a whirlwind of what attracted me here, and how I feel what I learned in college has been applicable in what I'm doing in my 25 years here.
I loved hearing all of yours stories as it relates to your PepsiCo careers as so far, whether you've been here for only a few years or more than 20 years. It's really great to hear from all of you on that. And I also wanted to point out, Mari, I know you have mentioned that, for students to be sure that they're open to, jobs that may not even exist to even today. I know something that I can personally relate is that me as a child, I don't think social media was a really big thing then. And then now I went to college, I was like, oh, now there's social media jobs that exist. So just as an example of another thing that there's probably definitely going to be jobs out there that may not exist that will exist maybe next year or so. So thank you all for sharing your story. Now I want to jump in because I know a number of you, and while you were talking about your stories at PepsiCo and your careers, noting a number of accomplishments that you have done. But there's also sometimes maybe you go through, experiences where, things don't turn out the way that you hope that you want to. And if you're someone maybe, for example, a person of color, a first-generation college student, it can feel mentally a little bit more difficult if you have experienced some sort of failure, or even if you're maybe what you call quote unquote the only one in the room, when you have gone through moments where maybe something doesn't go out the way that you wanted to go to. So I'm curious, and I would love to ask this, as appropriate within your professional career, I'd love to hear a time where you experienced failure. And I also would love to hear what you learned from that experience, and if any, what types of steps did you take to remedy that type of issue situation?
I can.
I was gonna say, I can start because I work in transportation, like nothing ever goes the way it's supposed to go, right? Like that's almost like why I have a full-time job, because if everything went the way it was supposed to go, a lot of our jobs wouldn't really exist. So for me, it's an interesting question because I've never felt like I've ever failed anything in my life. And it's the way that I think about it, because I think, Jamie, you just said they're learnings. And again, I'm a sports fan. And one of my favorite quotes is from Michael Jordan, who said, "I never lost a game, I just ran out of time." And I love that thinking and I love that mentality. And now that I have an 8-year-old boy who's super competitive, I don't know where he gets that from. And he gets really frustrated. And I'm like, buddy, like the professionals, baseball players only are hitting 3 or 4 out of 10. Steph Curry is, he's not making every 3-pointer. So even try to instill in him that that's part of life. And that's what keeps motivating you to get stronger, to get faster, and to keep trying. And you don't have time. And I have been one of the only my whole life, like in transportation, it's a very male dominated industry to begin with. I'm a lot of times was the only woman. What's exciting now is when I go to conferences, I'm actually at a women in trucking conference right now. And there's lines in the restroom for women. And that's exciting for me because 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. But I never really thought about it like that. I never really thought about what made me different. I always just thought about what made me unique and what skill set, and that's diversity, right? What do I bring to the table? And I think a lot of that had to do with my mentality about winning or being competitive or learning from it. And I'll tell you, I won't spare you the number of zeros, but I have overspent my budget the last 2 years by over 12%. Like that's a lot of zeros. And most people on paper probably would have thought I should have gotten fired by now. But what I think is more important and what I stress to my team is it's not necessarily about just the numbers and the results. It's about knowing our business. It's about having a strategy. It's about controlling what we can control and reframing what success looks like. There's 1,000 other variables. There's 1,000 other headwinds, but here's what we're going to lead into. Here's what we're going to do really well. And being able to be transparent. I communicated to our CEO the second week of this year, we got a problem. I'm going to miss my plan by a lot of zeros by the full year. And being transparent with the organization gains a lot of credibility. Whereas, again, if you just looked at paper, maybe you would consider that a failure. But to me, it wasn't. So hopefully that maybe helps a little bit.
I can go
next. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sangeeta. No, go ahead, Sangeeta.
Great. Hey, this is more relatable to you, right? This was a specific instant, as Marie talked about. Our jobs are so varied, so ambiguous, things never go as planned. But I want to talk about a specific instance from my career path. This was outside PepsiCo, right? So this was at the end of my first full year as marketer. I had made the transition from technology side into marketing side. I went into my annual performance review, right? Feeling all good, jazzed up. I'm going to have a conversation on my promotion. I've delivered everything as expected. Then the conversation started, right? And I was given the feedback, hey, that you delivered everything you needed, but we have feedback for you. Your cross-functionals felt that you were not delegating enough, or you were stepping into their toes and doing their job. And also there was some feedback on how you react in the meetings and your executive presence in those meetings, and you're not talking enough or providing your point of view enough in these meetings. And we want you to increase you talking and providing your point of view, right? That was a hard feedback for me because I went into that room thinking that I was going to get a promotion, right? So the next 1 hour, where was I? I was in the bathroom, right? Almost crying. My eyes out for the next hour or so. And this was hard feedback for me because coming into marketing, I did not realize the game has changed from my previous experiences. But I did not want this feedback to end my career either, right? The greatest gift that you could get is feedback. To date, I'm so thankful to have this feedback yearly in my marketing career. So this has shaped who I am as a marketer right now, right? So what did I do? I put a set of actions for myself, right? Including reaching out to cross-functionals or people who had feedback to say that, hey, what was I doing wrong? Taking a step back and looking at the things, right? I was communicating a lot by email. That means I was not building the connections that were needed too. I started going and stepping and talking to them in person, spending time with them, getting to know them personally, right? And the second one was around executive presence. This is where it was tricky because as a person of color, how the masses define executive leadership is very different from what you would have known and seen, right? That's where the tricky part comes in. And I had to remind myself of my work, my skills, etc., to ensure that I'm authentic in whatever I'm doing. While I take the feedback, I still want to be authentic over the years. And I've built over this over the course of my years. And this has actually become my strength at this point when I talk and get feedback from a lot of people. So never think about failure as something really bad. Take it as a stepping stone, and feedback is something, a gift that you can have no matter what.
I love these examples that Mari and Sangeeta are providing because they demonstrate a lot of resilience and vulnerability as well. And I think that's a couple of themes as I think about my career and where I've had opportunities that may not have gone the way I wanted to have them go. And as a person of color, my parents are Indian immigrants who immigrated to the US 50 plus years ago. Born and brought up here, but still those values that they brought over from their country of origin, they've instilled in me. And failure as an Asian person, an Asian woman who was in some ways similar to Mari, one of the few women in the conversation in IT and in the manufacturing field as well. It was hard. And I can think of a particular instance where what I didn't mention to y'all is I spent 19 of my 25 years focused on IT capability for supply chain. And so that there was an opportunity where my manager, who was a senior executive, decided to pursue other opportunities, and I was shortlisted for his role. But we had a new leader in the organization, and that person wanted to interview everyone and make sure that he was giving everyone a fair shot. Well, I was the only female. All my peers that were also competing for the role were male. And and generally not men of color, I'd say. I was the only person of color, one of two people of color as well. And at the time, I was concerned because of that instilling in me. I wanted to make sure I got everything on the table and that I presented myself in the best way possible so that I could secure the role. But what I was forgetting about is something Sangeeta pointed out very astutely, is that authenticity. I was pretending to be something I wasn't. I was trying to put myself out there in a way that would potentially help give me an edge, but not recognizing it was losing myself a little bit. And so when I had the interview, even though I was on that short list of candidates, I didn't do well. And I didn't present myself in the way that I should have presented myself or normally would have. I was walking on eggshells to try and to impress this person. And ultimately, when I didn't have the job extended to me, I was pretty upset because that's what I'd done for my entire career. That's what I was groomed to do, and missed out on a great opportunity at the time. And so I had to stretch grow my resilience muscle. Okay, what do I do now? And coming from an Asian family, failure is not something that was very accepted. And so, it was difficult for me to say, okay, now what am I going to do? I'm going to lift myself up. I'm going to find other ways and other skills. And so what I did was I found a way to reinvent and take a different career path. And what that led me to eventually was getting a global opportunity that helped me build some global capability for the organization, which then, guess what, audit came knocking to see how I was delivering on that global capability, and it actually created pull for me to go to the audit function and continue to grow there in a different way. But those were the two things. I'd say vulnerability, Sangeeta hit on authenticity, and then I'd add resilience to really find the way to recover from that failure, acknowledge it, learn from it, which Mari highlighted is all too important, and then find a way to continue and progress on.
going to be hard to build on what the three of you just shared, but I think a lot of what you all just shared also resonates with me. For me, my grandparents are from Ghana, West Africa. My mom was born in Ghana, West Africa. Immigrated to the United States when she was 9 years old. And so, Smita, as you talk about your upbringing and culturally the household in which you're brought up in, failure isn't an option. And Mari, as you reference, it being a mindset, I very much carry that mindset of, hey, I just ran out of time. I didn't lose, I just ran out of time. But I attribute a lot of that to my upbringing. I think the other aspect, and I don't know if others on this call also carry what I oftentimes have come to admit is at times what I, self given burden, that I also don't want to let not only my parents down, but my grandparents down, who had made so many sacrifices for me to be where I am today. And so every day I carry that called burden with me. I can't afford to fail. I can't. And I'll tell you, while I've learned time and time again to bet on myself, there was an instance where, Smita, as you just referenced, I had applied for a job based on all the conversations that I'd had coming out of the interview. I thought I was well positioned for it. And the feedback came back, and they decided to go with another candidate. And I was devastated, not just because, I wanted the opportunity, but because in that same breath, I thought I was letting down everybody, my family, those I had at home that cared about me. And, I think it helps at times in those moments to also have your inner circle, those people that you can pick up a phone and call, that can remind you of just how great you all are. Everyone on this call is great. I can tell already, we just met. But sometimes you need someone to remind you in an instance where you might forget yourself. And so having that inner circle for me in that instance and at other times throughout my career has helped, again, get me back on track. But I think the other aspect, and it's really that mentality for me, is that I can't afford to fail, and I won't, and I'll continue to bet on myself. And so that for me is how I approach what have been maybe instances of failures or mitigated them rather. So.
Wow, very inspired by all of you, in terms of how, when it comes to experiencing these moments of failures, or just like picturing as maybe you ran out of time, or maybe it's also like a redirection into something much better as you go along your career. I see in the comments, having your personal board directors, that support group, as you're progressing throughout each day. So I think another question I had as it relates to processing maybe something that didn't turn out the way you wanted to go, or it's like a failure that you had experienced. What else would you do for yourself as it relates to taking care of yourself? Letting that time to process. What do you do as self-care?
I run. Mostly, I always say I run to support my eating habit for the most part. But again, coming out of I played sports my whole life. And when I stopped doing that, I was like, oh, I got to do something. And so I started running. And I have not run a full marathon since I've had my children. So I have kind of my pre-40, pre-kids. I did 8 full marathons, and I think I've done 15 half marathons. But for me, that's when I do my best thinking. That's kind of when I get to clear my head. That's when nobody's bothering me, right? I just have that time. And that's usually when I can kind of get level set and come up with my plan. I do my best thinking and I come up with, okay, here's what I'm going to go do. And that's for me, the best thing.
I'm never going to talk about running around Mari ever again. I thought I ran until I don't run apparently.
Those are all
in a similar sense, the physical exertion. So for me, I actually go play basketball, even if it's in my driveway and I'm taking shots. It's just something to distract me, get me outside of, to Mari's point, to give me the time to really think it through. And that's too where I do my best thinking. Sometimes I'll go to the gym and I'll play a pickup game or something like that, but I've got to separate myself so that I can come back to it with a clear head and really think it through.
And I would say, first of all, right, recognize that you've gone through a disappointment or a traumatic moment. And if you need time to grieve, take the time to grieve. right? As I said, I went into the bathroom and cried for 1 hour, and that kind of cleared my mind. If you have to do that, do that. That's important, right? And lean into your feelings, and your feelings would guide you to say that, hey, what should you do next? You might feel ready to bounce back quickly than you actually expect to, right? Important thing to remember is failure is part of success. One of the poems I really love from Rudyard Kipling, right? If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, right? That is the line that keeps going on back and back in my head, saying that how do I keep my head high? Despite, I don't care about what others are thinking about me. I can overcome this. And that's an important attitude for us to cultivate as we move along in this journey.
I think for me, I'm one who will always be credited with wearing her emotions on her sleeve, whether they're positive or they're, in moments where things may be upsetting. So like Sangeeta said, that time to grieve, I will cry, and that's okay. And I think giving ourselves that space to respond to how we're feeling is important. And then for me, how I kind of recuperate from that and focus on myself is I love to create. So I will be the first to say I'm not a runner. I do like sports, but where I really find my passion is creativity. So I'll start painting, or I'll start sketching or drawing, and that for me has a way to provide myself with an outlet to regroup, think through, and meditate on what I want to do next, or how I want to once again kind of strengthen that resiliency and pick myself up and look for what's next and make progress. So creativity is my outlet.
That's so awesome to hear, like all of what you all like to do respectfully in terms of like taking care of yourself as you go through like these types of like failures or hard times. I know for me, just to add to the conversation, I actually like to journal and actually write things down a piece of like a notebook, like maybe what's going on in my day and like what I can learn from that experience, and just keep it right there. So at least if I don't feel like at the time comfortable talking about it to somebody live, it's right there for me to reflect on and like weeks from now after I write on it too. I do want to go on to how a number of our attendees here are current college students, and I know they will be looking at like maybe applying for like their first internship or the first full-time opportunity before they complete their college experience. So, and part of like, finding that internship and or full-time job involves like going through like, applying online to a company, as well as if they move on from the application round, going to like the job interview portions. So the question that I have for all of you as it relates to this, how should people like approach certain types of job interview questions? Like, for example, tell me about a time when you made a mistake, even if it was by accident or on a big project. What did you do after that to make sure it doesn't happen again while they're interviewing with recruiters and their potential team members and their managers at companies?
I can maybe go, looking at anybody else. Okay, great. So I would say start by asking yourself the question, right? What is the interviewer or the company trying to gauge out of this question, right? What they are trying to understand here is your tenacity, your determination, and your willingness to learn and improve. That are the key things that they're actually looking for when they're actually asking this question, right? Saying I have not failed is not an answer, right? Everybody, all of us have failed, have learned from that. So let's be honest about that, correct? I would encourage you to start by talking about what is the situation? What are the actions you took? And what are the results coming out of that? More using a framework to answer your question. You should also want to be strategic about what you choose as a story to answer this question, right? Ideally, you need an example that had consequences, but you were able to overcome the fallout that actually happened from this example. That way you can highlight your determination, your resilience, etc., and not just show that you made a mistake, right? I would also encourage you to remain calm, fact-oriented, and just being honest with the answer that you have to go. Always follow up with what you learned and what actions that you took so that you're making for a right story.
And actually, I was just somebody they were putting in the chat at the start. That's what I was going to talk about. It's always, what was the situation? What did you do? What was the outcome? Right? Very succinct. And to Sangeetha's point, be very specific, right? Give those examples, tell those stories. And that really comes across well. And then I know we talked about this before, but just to reiterate, just be authentic. Like that's it. I don't overthink it. Maybe just be authentic and just explain what was the situation? What did you do? Outcome.
Ditto. And I think the key is authenticity, right? If you're trying to find an example and you're making it up, it won't come across with the same passion, with the same conviction if it's not something that you actually experience. So you want to definitely focus on actual things that happen where you can and tell the story, right? Think of it as a story. The situation, task, action, result, or alternative action, alternative result, it's intended to be a story. And that's how the question's asked as well. Tell me about a time, right? It's your experience. So tell your story and let that come through using that method.
And you could see we blew up the chat. I think all of us tried to type it at the same time, so I won't reiterate that aspect. But I think encourage this group to also embrace. I think we talked a lot about failures and those shaping who we ultimately are. And so it's okay to have made a mistake. I think I often share with my team, like we all make mistakes. If anyone on this call, of however many of us there are, the 65 haven't made a mistake, let's chat afterwards. I need to know the secret. But being able to learn from that mistake and then articulate how it is you learned. And that's that action, alternative result. Like, what did you learn and how are we going to prevent us from making that mistake again? That's ultimately what I would say often, as they've already articulated, folks are looking for in that interview process.
I think the only other thing to add is also just in terms of, that's also what they're going to be gauging is your communication. You're right. Like what are your interpersonal skills? How effectively do you communicate? I've done interviews where even if they follow the STAR, it's like, this is what happened. This is what I did. And that was the outcome. Like, okay, that's it. Like, that's all you got. Right. So even though the answers may have been good, but it was in the delivery. And I'm like, okay, is this somebody that I could stand up in front of a group of 50 drivers to help bring your team with you? So I think, Sangeetha said it, like, what are we trying to gauge? But we're also looking for that too. Like, can you articulate? And we all lead people. We're in the people business. So how are you going to effectively communicate, cross-functionally with your teams and bring people with you?
Thank you all for I'll go for it. Yes,
I can add one quick comment. So you can also tell a bit about the company's values by the types of questions they're asking you, like these behavioral examples, as Jamie started out with. They're indicative of the company's culture, right? And so as you're as much interviewing the company as they're interviewing you. So take that time to really, like Sangeetha said, gauge the question. It's saying more about the company and particularly their culture and their values, because there's a reason they're asking you these questions.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your tips, in cases where, students, when they're applying for internships and full-time roles, have to answer these types of questions. Claire, I see your hand is raised. Keep it up right now for now. I think we'll have time for some Q&A at the end. I just have maybe 2 more questions to ask for the panel, and we'll get straight into any audience questions. So I know that all of you, the panelists here, you all are members of at least one of PepsiCo's employee resource groups, are known by the acronym ERGs. So for everyone in the audience, for those who don't know what ERGs are, at PepsiCo, they are designed to help our associates find community as well as acceptance outside of their immediate teams, but also helping our associates learn how to be allies with marginalized communities. One example, Mosaic supports our Black associates, and Adelante, which I'm actually a member of, I just joined like a few months ago, supports our multicultural Hispanic Latino associates. So I'd love to hear from our panelists. We'd love to hear your own experience getting involved, as well as attending like the ERG that you're member of, like their events initiatives, and how they've helped you in your career so far at PepsiCo.
Second go.
Okay, go ahead, Sangeetha.
Yeah. Murray, if you want to go, please go.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, great. Hey, I lead women of color from a headquarters standpoint, right? So, but this ERG group has actually provided me the opportunity to connect with different people who I do not actually talk in my day-to-day job, right? First of all, it provides you a rich set of connection, almost a sisterhood, I would say, who you can lean on and get advice from and be a part of your board of directors or your sounding board as well. For example, one of the programs that we did as part of Women of Color is View Through My Lens series, right? So what did View Through My Lens series do? It kind of gives behind the door, like almost unveiling the curtain, right? From a senior executive standpoint as to what happens behind the door. Like if you have a sponsor within the organization, what does the sponsor do for you? What is the sponsor's job? How do you get a sponsor? How do you get a board of directors? These are pretty honest conversations that you have with senior executives. And also there have been a lot of opportunities for the women of color members to connect one-on-one with the executives, right? It provides that forum as well. So I love being part of Women of Color ERG at this point, just like it helps you broaden your network overall.
I'd say for me over the years, I've gone through a lot of and been involved with a lot of the ERGs, which has been a really great experience. So I started off and I was involved with our PepsiCo Asian network. I was involved with our Women's Inclusion Network. I was involved with the Women of Color network over, lots of years, held leadership positions with the Women's Network. And a couple of years ago, I was actually the executive sponsor of our LGBT plus ERG, which was a really great, learning. So I think for me, I'd kind of share like one of the key takeaways and what I really liked, we were doing this inclusion training, and in the LGBT cohort training, we introduced this concept called beliefs versus behaviors. And I absolutely loved that because at PepsiCo, we believe, everybody has their own individual thoughts and opinions and beliefs about everything, right? Across you name any political, social aspect, we all have our personal beliefs. But as PepsiCo employees, we are going to behave in a manner in which we treat everyone with respect and dignity, regardless of the color of our skin, what we look like, or who we love. And I just love that concept. And so that for me was one of the biggest takeaways that I had in really helping people like separate beliefs versus behaviors, and how do you go then, apply that moving forward. And then the other real learning that I had, or actually two more I'll share, is one, growing up, I never saw anybody that looked like me, right? I'm half Asian. I'm from, a predominantly Hispanic town. So I bet you if I put it in the chat, everybody would have been like, what are you? And I get that a lot because that's okay. My full name is Mariko, and I can tell a story about my mom being born in Japanese internment camp, which is a whole other story. But I actually really like that. It's just, I didn't have anybody that looked like me. So for me, I didn't think that I had to see somebody that looked like me to ever aspire to a certain position. But over the years, I've realized like that's a big deal for people. People want to see people that look like them or that represent them. And I've had to learn that even as, what you would call a minority, I had to learn that that was important to other people. So I am more aware of that. The other big learning that I had as a leader, right? Again, we're in the people business. I've been leading large teams for most of my career. I inadvertently had left my straight white male leaders behind. And I did not realize how naive they were to the challenges that all of these different cohorts were facing. And it really struck me, and Sangeeta, you can appreciate, I got an invite one day for how to attract and retain women of color. And who do you think the distribution list went to? Any guesses? The women of color, right? And I was thinking like, that's not going to help, right? We're not the audience that needs to know how to attract and retain. So from that moment on, I send my entire leadership, which is probably half straight white males, I send them everything. I send them, here's what's going on with the motherboard, ERG, here's what's going on with women in color, here's what's going on with Mosaic, here's what's going on with our, equal ERG, so they can become part of the journey and help be allies, because we know like we're never going to get anywhere. We're not going to advance anything unless we're all moving in the same direction. So those are kind of some of the key takeaways that I've had in our experience with our employee resource groups.
Yeah, so my experience is similar to Mari's. I've had, because of my tenure here, and I've had a lot of different areas in which I could provide some leadership capability and activation, particularly for our Asian network. I was a leader in Plano and then helped co-lead a startup Asian network in one of our satellite locations in Chicago. I've been a leader in our enable function. My father is actually fully blind and diabetic, so it was really trying to understand how to best support him, but also support other associates I had on my team who were hard of hearing, as well as helping our community. And then more recently, I've had leadership roles, a co-leadership role in our Women of Color, and then a support role in our leadership team there, as well as leading some of our mentoring across the Women's Inclusion Network. I think the standout programs for me have really been twofold. One, allyship, and someone mentioned that on the chat. It's even if you're not of that, that background or experience, it's being able to support other ERGs as their allies and the members of the ERGs to stand up for them and have voices for them when they may have a voice that's inadvertently quieted at the table. So because people have biases that they're not aware of. And so the allyship program has been really meaningful for me, whether it's the LGBTQ plus community, our Black community, our Hispanic Latin American community, and our women of color and women here at PepsiCo. And then additionally, we have an ERG that we haven't talked about yet, which is Valor, which supports our veterans as well. The second area of where I've really found these ERGs, not only from a culture background and again, really finding that community, but it's also mentoring. There are so many connections, whether it's in the function, outside the function, in a different location, reverse mentoring, group mentoring, lots of different opportunities for mentoring that our ERGs provide. And I've been both a mentee as well as a mentor. And that's been probably the most rewarding thing for me personally, is being able to support people that are more junior in their career or trying to understand how to navigate specific situations and really grow from them and get some guidance behind it and support. So allyship and mentoring are the two things I'd suggest that I've walked away from with personally. Karen?
And just to jump in real quick to it, just to piggyback on what Smita was saying, and one of the things I've seen over the last 20 years with PepsiCo's ERGs, and I think we're getting to a really good space. And I'll just give you another example. All the ERGs work together as a council. And what we found was the Native American group RISE, or the Indigenous people, one of the biggest challenges that their cohort has is suicide. Smita mentioned Enable with mental health, suicide, Valor, veterans, suicide, LGBT, suicide. So instead of 4 different cohorts trying to independently work on suicide prevention and awareness, those 4 cohorts got together and figured out, we all have this in common. How do we collectively try to gain and spread the awareness of suicide prevention? So, and as you're going through those interviews, these would be questions that I would be asking of those companies, of what are they doing in this space?
Yeah, I love all that. I mean, it's really around how do we go create a space where we can all bring our whole selves to work each and every day. And so for me, my introduction into ERGs was just around that. I was an only one, and ERGs and Mosaic specifically was my opportunity to connect with those, not necessarily in my plant, but outside within the organization, and build that mentorship, as Smita highlighted, build that network. And from there, as I've grown within my career, I've had the pleasure and opportunity to then in turn try to pass it back. And as you'll hear us say in PepsiCo, raise the bar on talent and diversity, but through ERGs, really engage, and at all levels, because it's not just about our leaders, but also our frontline, who are all looking for the same level of engagement. No one wants to feel like the only one. There's a lot that folks are dealing with outside of work. And frankly, we spend a lot of time together at work. And so the more that we can support each other, I think more collectively, the better our business will be. So there's the engage, there's the educate. I think Mari said it, there's a lot that folks just don't know, whether it's about why Black History Month is important, why Women's History Month is important. And so educating on where that all stems from, and and where it's rooted, the education part also helps us build those allies who are critical in truly moving the mark as we think about changing just collectively, whether it's our organization or the society in which we live. And then the last is elevate. I truly believe that, we can go elevate both our people and our communities through celebration of the diversity that is, again, on this call and within our organization. And so for me, that's how I got started in ERGs and ultimately why I'm so passionate about them. And I think we've collectively talked, you'll notice we each serve in different levels or have served in different levels. But that's why we'll continue to do so, again, because of, I think, the value it brings to PepsiCo and then collectively the communities in which we live.
All right.
We're not, none of us are passionate about this at all, if you can't tell.
I love the passion. I love, the vulnerability, resilience and everything else. And also, I think you might maybe have inspired me to maybe learn more about all the different, going more deeper into ERGs. Now I just signed up for a few myself a few weeks ago. So it's great to hear all of that great stuff that you guys have get involved in, get inspired by with the respective ERGs that you all are part of. So we actually do have a few minutes. I know we have a question from Claire. So if anyone else has a question that you would like to ask during this remaining time, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. Claire, I know you've been rating, so whenever feel free to unmute yourself, Claire, and ask away.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Claire. I'm from Syracuse University and I study supply chain entrepreneurship and environmental sustainability and policy. And my question is more directed towards Mari for supply chain and transportation logistics. I was wondering, when you're working with a team, because this is obviously going to be a question in the interview, like how do you organize your people, and if they don't complete their necessary tasks, like how have you found success in communicating and organizing your team when they consistently do not meet expectations?
Yeah, so again, kind of referencing back my mentality about the coach, right? That's what coaching is about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So coaching is about changing behavior. And so, yes, there are formal disciplinary processes we have with progressive discipline, but the intent of discipline is to change behavior. And I think that's the approach that, we always take with our teams is, we're all adults, these are adults. And I think just really getting them to understand the why. And, just yesterday, I did a termination appeal for a driver, and he had like 4 steps of speeding. And in his mind, he was like, well, I'm not because we have a corporate speed limit of 65 miles per hour. And he wasn't getting it. And so I finally just took a step back and I said, why do you think we do that? And I really tried to help him understand, this is why, because speeding is an indicator of a future crash. I don't want to call your family and tell them you've been involved in a crash, number one. Number two, if you look at the speed of impact of a crash and the distance, the time it takes to actually stop an 80,000 pound tractor trailer, 65 miles per hour, it takes a lot shorter distance to stop than going 70 or 75. And oh, by the way, there's an NPG from a sustainability standpoint. Here is what that does from an emission standpoint. So I think in every case, it's really getting your associates to understand the why we're doing what we're doing, so then they can apply that into what their behaviors are doing to impact that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think there was a question in the chat, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat, and I think we can kind of piggyback off from earlier, as I know I had asked an earlier question to the panelists in regards to how people should approach situational questions in interviews. We had another attendee who is curious if you have any other tips and advice for people who are currently interviewing for jobs in our internships. What's your best tip?
My best tip: research the companies with whom you're interviewing. I can't tell you how invaluable it is to know what the company is about, what any indication of kind of what their values are, what countries they operate in, what some of their core products are. Do your research as you are looking to apply to different companies, and let that reflect in your interview as you're talking about yourself. And when somebody asks you, tell me about yourself, right? Talk about what you've learned about the company and why you personally feel that tie to the company at which you're applying.
Just to add to Smita's points, right? And as Smita said earlier, it's a two-way interviewing process, right? So over the last 10 minutes, if you have an opportunity to ask questions, make sure you're prepared to ask the right set of questions. So you're actually re-interviewing them to know the culture of the company. What are you getting into? And things like that. So make sure you remember that it's a two-way interviewing process.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna take, I want to make sure Paul, Aaron, and Tiffany are able to have their questions asked. So I'm gonna stop at Tiffany, but I will have Paul whenever you're ready to ask your question to our panelists.
Thank you so much. My name is Paul Dana, studying business administration. And I am just curious on what I can do to prepare to apply for an internship and not feeling intimidated. When I listen to all of you guys are professionals, you guys are sharp, and you have technical skills. And I'm just kind of feeling a little intimidated and I don't want to waste a spot. So I guess my question is, what can I do to prepare to bring something that's worthwhile for you guys?
I'd say, first of all, like, we didn't all start like this, right? We weren't born with these. So for one, I would say extend yourself some grace. And the other thing too, you have to realize about PepsiCo, and what I always tell our interns is we give you all real work, right? So we're not giving you hypothetical case study type stuff. We're giving you actual real work that we just haven't been able to get to, and or we don't have the resources to do. So I would say the biggest thing you can do is just be prepared to use whatever skills and strengths you have to help us solve whatever problem it is. That's the best thing you can do, because we don't know, right? Sometimes we get these interns and we have an idea of what we think we want the project to be, but then we really figure out, hey, this, Paul, you're going to be really good at X, Y, or Z. So we may shift that a little bit. So going back to kind of what, Sangeetha and Smita were even telling, be transparent and authentic about what your skills really are, because let us go figure out then how we're going to leverage that. Right? We don't expect you to come in and know that, but if you tell us what you can do, we'll figure out how we're going to leverage your individual strengths and skills to benefit whatever the project or what we're looking to do.
And training's available. Keep that in mind. So what Mari said, right? Like if I think of IT, it's not that somebody has a programming experience in the specific language. It's that they understand structured or 4GL or object-oriented programming. And then we can apply that to what we're doing on an actual project, like Mari said, but with potentially a mentor or buddy plus training to help that person understand how to implement what they've learned conceptually now in the business environment.
And I think it's been said, do your research. I think it'll vary depending on what level or what internship you're ultimately applying for. But for me, and I know Mari had said it, like in the part of our business where we're leading people, we all lead people at this point, but being able to then in your internship articulate what experience you've had in doing that, or how you would lead those people. And so doing your research will also help you tailor that interview for the internship that you're ultimately applying for. I'll tell you, not too long ago, I was sitting on the other side interviewing for my internship, and I wouldn't encourage you to do this, but again, to the spirit of we're all human, and we weren't all where we're sitting today. The interviewer asked me, Kieran, where do you ultimately want to be? And I said, I don't know. Don't respond that way. I'm encouraging you all to learn from my mistake. That was a mistake I've since learned from. But again, what I'll tell you is that we're all human. So don't be intimidated. Do your homework, do your research, and then be your authentic self.
All right. We have a question from Aaron whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name's Aaron Holmes. I'm a sophomore business information technology student, and I attend North Carolina A&T State University. And I just wanted to ask the panel, a lot of you guys I know you guys have been in your companies for a long time, 20 plus years, which, congrats to all you guys. But I just wanted to ask, as I've been interviewing with a lot of companies, a lot of them speak to the culture being like a big reason why not only they joined, but they stayed. And they talk about like having mentors and like being in, company organizations. Could any of you guys kind of speak to like an experience you had with a company organization, like a company mentor that kind of helped you along your path and kind of, led you to, stay in your group and kind of stay, help you get better and, kind of become a better leader as you rose in the company?
I can start. I've had several. From when I first walked in the door, I was put onto a project like Mari was talking about, where we were supporting our manufacturing plants, doing some Y2K remediation, as well as system enhancements to make the end user's experience in the manufacturing plant better. And I was paired with someone who had a good amount of experience in the industry, could help me from a technical perspective, but also help me understand how to represent what I was doing with the rest of the team, things like that. So somebody who really mentored me, took me under their wing. And then I think Kieran said, pay it back, right? So later when there was a new hire on my team from the same university, same degree program I had, she was needing help in trying to understand how to navigate what she needed to do for her team to be successful. I mentored her and coached her on, and some of it's the here's what we do, but here's also the things that you don't know about, like the mores and the norms, the unwritten rules, so to speak. That's really where I found mentoring helping early in my career, and even later in my career as well, as I was moving through the different roles and ranks of the organization. But having a mentor, it can be various things. It can be for a specific role, for a specific job or duty that you're performing or project. It can also be somebody that's just the safe space that you can talk to about overall career guidance or situational opportunities where you may need some help.
All right. I said that we would just take one more last question. I also just do want to honor everybody's time here. I know we went past the 5 p.m. Eastern mark. I know Tiffany, you were the last person I mentioned I could take a question from, so feel free to ask away, and then we'll close it off.
Okay, sure. Thank you. This question is actually more directed to Kieran. Hi, my name is Tiffany. I'm a junior at Bucknell University studying chemical engineering. And I'm really excited actually to be joining PepsiCo next summer in their beverages over in Valhalla. But I know earlier today you mentioned that you were also a campus hire. And so I was wondering, my question for you was, looking back, I know you said before you didn't see yourself as making chips for the rest of your life, but looking back, maybe what was one change or one resource that would have helped you make that decision, I guess, long term, like seeing that you wanted a position, staying in PepsiCo after your internship? What was one resource or one experience that sort of encouraged you that you wanted to stay at PepsiCo?
Yeah, I think it's a tremendous question. I mean, I think, and Mari hinted at this, when you intern for us, you're going to be given real problems we're trying to solve, that we're looking for a different perspective on. I had never heard of that in an internship through any other organization. And I think initially when I started my internship, I was a bit surprised that this organization, this Fortune 50 company, was asking me, an intern, how to go solve this problem to go impact our business. And that is so true to who we are as an organization, where we truly are. You've heard us talk a lot about diversity and the power of diversity and the diverse thoughts, and but being able to leverage that as an intern, so I think it was in that moment, and I imagine you're going to have that same experience when you intern with us this upcoming summer, and know that if you were to return, right, and it's a two-way interview. We talked about that a couple times. As you're interviewing the organization and deciding, hey, is this an organization I see myself with long-term, while they're interviewing you over this 10-week period. If you choose to return with us full-time, know that that continues. When I started after graduating as what we call a supply chain leader within supply chain, I had a team of 20 to 25 frontline team members. I just graduated college and I was leading a team of how many people? And so that the responsibility and the $1 million part of the business that I was operating, I just haven't heard or seen, call it the trust that this organization gives into our new leaders and new associates anywhere else, frankly. And so the opportunity, and then again, we talked a lot about the people. You'll get to experience that through your internship, and those are just two of the many reasons that ultimately were resources I'd leveraged to decide PepsiCo and Frito-Lay was the place for me.
And Jamie, I know we're out of time, but just one last kind of closing thought for me, and something I'm extremely passionate about as a mom. I have a 5th grade daughter and a 3rd grade son, and I'm coaching my 3rd grade son's baseball team. So for you young people, I want to just make sure you know you don't have to choose between being a parent or being a mom and having a career. You can absolutely do both. And I'll tell you, as much as I love my job, I love my career, I love the people I work with, I love my team, being a mom is the absolute best part of my life. And I will also say that being a mom has made me a better leader, and all the skills and all the things we just talked about, I learned and got more experience from as being a mom. So I know it wasn't a question, but I was just, while we had you, that's something, like I said, it just bothers me when I hear young people think that they have to choose between motherhood and having a career.
All right. I just want to say, Smita, Sangeeta, Mari, Kieran, thank you so much for your time with all of us today. Let's give everybody them a round of applause using those hand claps emojis that's at the bottom of your screen. I really appreciate you all for just spending the time with all of us here. Just sharing your stories, and just I know I personally feel very inspired just hearing all of you throughout this hour that we were in. I also do want to give a quick shout out to my coworker Dora Mora, who has been letting all the attendees in behind the scenes and making sure everything goes according to plan. So let's give Dora a round of applause as well. But yes, just overall, thank you to everybody for joining us this afternoon, and thank you to our wonderful panelists for sharing their time experiences with all of us. You could have chosen another thing to attend, but we're really happy you were able to, all of us over here, to join the special type of panel discussion today. So that being said, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their day, and just thank you again for coming out to our Executive Fireside Chat panel on how to rise from failure.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Jamie. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, everyone.